Kayden McDonald is a dominant run defender whose game resembles a Super Bowl champion and Hall of Fame defensive tackle.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian Parson. That's Keith Sanchez. And on today's episode, we're breaking down Ohio State's destructive monster defensive tackle, Kayden McDonald. We're going to talk about and explain our grade for him, give you some NFL comps, talk about the concerns with his game going to the NFL, and break down the pros of his game going into the NFL. And Keith, I want to start by saying, in terms of a power statement, I want to just kind of let people know right off the gate before I kick it to you. To me, Kayden McDonald is the most dominant defensive tackle in this NFL draft class. And honestly, I feel like with his ability, he's a guy that I think he's scheme versatile, and he would help all 32 teams if they had a need at the defensive tackle spot. He is just that dominant of a player when I turned on the tape, Keith.
Yeah, I agree. And you started it off by making that statement, which I agree with. Let's end this podcast off, though, at the very end, discussing how high Kayden McDonald can go, right? Because that's something I do want to get into. But first, let's get into the pros, right? Like, why do we feel that way about Kayden McDonald, the interior defensive lineman from Ohio State? And DP, I have to start with the power and strength. When this young man triggers power and strength, he is a heavy-handed people mover that can snatch people and throw them out the way. Ability to play double teams, ability to overwhelm offensive linemen at time, right? When you talk about the 300 plus pounds, you talk about the first step quickness, the lower body strength combined with upper body strength, his speed to power conversion, it goes into being overwhelming at times, right? And usually when we say speed to power, we're talking about rushing a quarterback, but I think there's a speed to power conversion where he's generating power that happens as a run defender also, where you see knockback, you see displacement of offensive linemen in the backfield. And it was partly, why I think was it last week's episode? We discussed Kayden McDonald. You know what? It was with the mock draft, right? And I was talking about, I'm like, listen, I this guy is good enough to where there's a team that that may draft him that we're not expecting. And so I to me, it's the power and strength, but also I'll give him credit for DP, the high motor and intensity that he plays with. There's and when I say this, I mean this in the most positive way, especially for a defender. There's an element of recklessness that he plays with. As far as chasing down ball carriers, pursuit, doing whatever he has to do to get the job done. And when I say the recklessness, I mean that in the way of that's how you want your defensive lineman to play, right? Hair on fire guys, playing through the whistle and honestly kind of going on the verge of the whistle, right? Like, kind of the little bit of chippiness that's going to ruffle some feathers. So Kayden McDonald, this is a young man is very talented.
100%. I think, 6'2", 1/8, 326 pounds, wingspan of 78 and 1/8, arm length of 32 and a quarter. Like, he has the ability to strike, to latch, lock out, shed blocks. He handles double teams well. Like, you talk about the strength and the power, Keith. That's his superpower. That's his A trait. Is to me, this run defense, like with teams playing so much too high, you need a guy like Kayden McDonald on the interior of your defensive line. Because if you're playing with lighter fronts and you don't want to sacrifice bringing that safety from deep and bringing him into the box because you're facing a team that's willing to run the football, a Baltimore Ravens, whatever team is coached by our Harbaugh, right? Whether it's the Giants now or the Chargers with Jim. If Greg Roman's the OC, you're getting the run game. You know what I mean? Like, what to be prepared for. And you need a guy like Kayden McDonald, a guy that can absolutely play two gaps. If you do, crazy enough, if you let him handle one gap, one block responsibility, I don't know if he's blockable by most guards. You know what I mean? Because of that strength and also his knowledge of how to attack leverage and everything else, I love what he brings as a run defender, Keith. He's an elite run defender because I'm watching him, and I think you talked about when you talked about him and Jordan Davis, you talking about the lateral movement, and he's hard to reach block because of that lateral movement. You see him move his feet and everything, which I think between the two, they were coached to do different things, right? Where like, they let Kayden McDonald just make plays. Jordan Davis was asked to maintain the gaps, like destroy double teams, just eat up space in a sense. We've seen him evolve a little bit better and more being asked to do more with the Philadelphia Eagles, hence him getting a payday. But with Kayden McDonald, like it's hard to reach block him. You're telling that backside guard opposite of the center to, if you're trying to run like, zone blocking schemes, you want him to reach over and get to Kayden McDonald. That's a difficult task. Number one, he knows how also, I always watch defensive linemen and defensive tackles. Do you strike as you're moving laterally, right? That strike is going to be the thing that knocks back with that power and keep that reach block from reaching you. And I think he does a good job of that as well. But he does give you, some pass rush upside. You see that first step quickness. He's either, we'll talk about the pad level being consistent and stuff like that going into the NFL, because that's really where he can unlock his full potential in game. But man, like his ability on the interior defensive line to command the attention of the blocking scheme. Like that's what, like I truly feel like people talk about Caden Curry and stuff like that. Some of the other defensive linemen, I think Kenyatta Jackson went back to Ohio State.
Yeah, he went back. Yep.
He went back. He was one of the guys that I felt would have been a sleeper edge in this class because he can play. A lot of their money was made because of Kayden McDonald's presence, right? And I feel like teams will. I feel like we're not in any of the O-line meeting rooms, but I'm pretty sure those O-line meeting rooms, Keith, that O-line coach said, wherever number 98 is, we need 2 sets of hands on his shoulder pads at all times. Like you don't want him in single block situations. You want to double team and try to move him off the spot, which is hard because he anchors very well. So as a run defender, Keith, whether it's gap scheme, power, zone, yeah, he can defend it all. Like he's the type of run defender that's going to be able to shut down whatever you're running.
Yeah, there's one word that you got to, DP, that I want to kind of hit on, and that's the quickness, right? For being a 320-pound man, you talked about how the quickness prevented him from being reach blocked in zone schemes. But I also thought that it allowed him to be a penetrator too, to where I was like, you know what? I think he's scheme versatile, but I think he's alignment versatile too. That if you have and that's why I talked about the Philadelphia Eagles drafting him was because if you have Jordan Davis, right, because he has first step quickness, talking about Kayden McDonald, it doesn't prevent you from blocking. You don't have 2 nose tackles because I think Kayden, in my opinion, his first step quickness is good enough to where if you run in a 4-3, like you could kick him to the 3 tech, right, and allow him to get upfield. And he offers some of that same. He won't be 10 sack production guy, but some of that same type of upfield disruptiveness going on. So I really liked what Kayden was able to provide from there. Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed. And when you watch him as an interior defensive lineman, right, like, and just understanding this is not one of the flashy positions, it's not a sexy position, right, but just getting the job done and enforcing your will on another person's will, right? Like this was just simply, this is big on big, right? One big person versus another big person. And Kayden was dominant in a lot of those matchups, DP. But let's do this, man. We kind of hinted on and we discussed it a little bit. And this is what we do at Locked On NFL Draft, right? We like to give you a complete analysis of who these players, who these prospects are. So let's discuss Kayden McDonald's, not the pros, but let's talk about the concerns, right? Why is he not a top 5 pick, right? And what are some of the things that he needs to improve on? Let's discuss that coming up next.
It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go on about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head over to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you. Again, head over to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Before we break down the concerns in Ohio State star defensive tackle Kayden McDonald's games, don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to our Discord channel, our group chat with me, Keith, and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonnfldraft.supercast.com to join. The concerns for the big 6'3", 6'2", 300, almost 30-pound defensive tackle out of Ohio State, Kayden McDonald, Keith. I think when I look at Kayden, the number one thing I am going to, it's kind of similar to Jordan Davis, is when you look at his snaps game to game, he doesn't play a high, and it's because of how dominant this darn defense was too.
Mm-hmm.
But like he's got some games where he's played less than 25 snaps in the entire game, less than 30 snaps in the game. He's their starter, but like you look at what 18, 18, 24, 25, 22, 22, 29, and 30. So it's like, okay, if we're drafting him, are you going to be able to play, let's say 60% from a windedness standpoint, things like that? Are you going to be, because you haven't had to do that in college this past season for Ohio State for good reasons, of course. Your team was dominant. A lot of games were blowouts. You probably sat some of those second halves on the bench, chilling and talking to your teammates because y'all just dominated everybody up until the Indiana game. But I think that's going to be one of my big concerns is, hey, how do you translate in terms of, hey, you get into one of those shootout games and you have to play 60, 70 snaps, so whatever the case may be, because the opposing offense is scoring, your offense is scoring, and both defenses are kind of gassed in the sense you have to play a high number of snaps. I think that's going to be one of my big concerns is how, like, we won't figure that out until we get to the season to see how much snaps he can handle, but that's going to be a question for him. That was one coming up for Jordan Davis as well. When you're big like that, people question the lung capacity. Can you stay on the field and for 4 quarters be a high volume snap count guy and your play doesn't decline because of it?
Yeah, I think you approached it in the right way, right? Talking about the snap count, right? But also discussing the potential reasons for the snap count, right? Like, right, they're dominant, then it's 50-0 at half. And then also, even when it is a close game, right? And you play some of the better teams and it's a closer game, let's say it's within 2 touchdowns and your defense plays the majority of the game. But if you're getting 3 and outs, right, then that's just not a lot of snaps, right? Like the average team gets, I think, maybe 8-9 possessions per game. So if you 3 and out, that's literally 3 plays, right? And then that's a wrap for the entire drive, right? So see you in another 15 minutes. So like that's just how it goes. So I like that you added that layer, but I think it should be an area of concern / unknown, right? Because the truth is we don't know, right? And we always talk about checking those boxes. And I agree with you in the comparison to the Jordan Davis thing, where I thought with Jordan Davis, we kind of knew more. They're like, okay, you're going to need a rotational piece. I think with Kayden, we just truly don't know. Like it's like, all right, we don't know if you're gassed or if you're tired, or is it just flat
and
out.
I got some snap count numbers for Jordan Davis. He was that 2022 draft when he was drafted. He played 270 snaps that rookie year and went up to 561 in 2023. Back down, I don't know the context of 2024, why it went back down, but it's 444. 2025 though, 715 snaps. He had 318 rushing snaps, 397 pass rush snaps. So like, just, is it something like cumulatively it gets better and the snap count rises? We that could happen as we've seen with Jordan Davis, but like you said, we just don't have enough of a sample size of, hey, in those situations, does Kayden McDonald play? I think the last 2 games of the season, the Indiana game and Miami game, he did play 55 snaps in those games. He did play well even with the higher number of snaps. But again, like I said, looking at Jordan Davis, I think the most snaps he played in the game, this past season was, I think, almost 60 or 59. But he had multiple games over 40 to 45 snaps in the game. So that's definitely something to watch out for. But something I'm interested in seeing how it plays out.
Yep. Let's talk about this. You discussed a little bit in the first segment, or you started to hint at it. The high pad level, right? As
Yeah.
far as a concern, that's something to me that flashed also, right? And something I
Mhm.
believe I put in my scouting report, that there were times where he came up high, and you don't know if that's tied to the fatigue part, right? Or is it
Right,
just
right.
I hate to say a lack of discipline, like he's an undisciplined player, but it's a lack of concentration and focus, right? To
Mhm.
be like, okay, every
Attention to
single snap.
detail.
Yeah, just details, the minor details of it. Standing, because when he did play with high pad level DP, I thought that when he played with a high pad level, the arm length being average kind of showed in the fact that offensive linemen were able to get to him, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And his process of shedding them became a little bit more delayed, because obviously they was able to get great hand placement. I don't know if you've seen the same
Yeah.
thing.
No, 100%. I think that, and compare it with, we'll always talk about hand carries with offensive linemen, but I look at it for
Mhm.
D linemen too. His hands are a little wide. So then when you're up, right, you pop up like a jack in the box. And the fact that your hands are wide, you give a easier strike zone to the offensive lineman to get their hands into your chest plate, to your pads, stuff like that. It's the same thing for offensive linemen. You don't want your hands to be super wide, because if a guy can get his hands inside your shoulder pads into your chest plate, they can have more control of the rep. It's the same thing for defensive tackle. So I think definitely, because he flashes the ability to keep his pad level low and drive through into contact. And when he does that, you see him just absolutely just shed blocks. Like, you see the quickness and everything, and then you work your way almost like the 40-yard dash, where you drive phase and then you work your way up. Like, at times he just pops up a little bit too much, and then it's like, all right, you fight to a stalemate, and then you can't play to your leverage. With his power,
Mhm.
if he leverages properly, oh yeah, that rep is probably going to him. Like, you know what I mean? That's probably in his favor 9 times out of 10. It's just like wrestling. I always like, I love offensive and defensive linemen who have a wrestling background. I didn't look to see if Kayden McDonald has one, but if he does, shout out to him. But that's what I typically like when I'm watching, like when I look into guys' backgrounds from high school, like, because they understand body angling, positioning, leverage, because that's what wrestling, on that wrestling mat, that's what that's all about, is angling, position, stamina, all leverage, all of that. So I think that was a big thing for me as well, Keith, is just consistency. Because it's not like he can't do it. I think he does do it. It's just more consistency. I think also from a consistency standpoint, I think more time on task with him, Keith. I think block recognition. I think there's some times where they can run some traps and catch him. You know what I mean? Like, where he's the unblocked defender. And you got that guard pulling backs from backside, and
Mhm.
you could seal him. You know what I mean? Now again, he's 326, almost 330. So I'm not saying that you're blowing him off his wheels. You're not knocking him off, off his feet, right? But it's more so of sealing him, right? He gets upfield and you get that momentum and you seal him. And now there's a running back. I run right off of that pulling guards. I'm running right off his backside. I'm cutting right up off that block, because I'm not trying to run outside of him to the leverage of Kayden McDonald. You know what I mean? I'm trying to cut off of that to where I can avoid him altogether. So I want to see him just kind of recognize blocks a little bit better, and the blocking concepts like that they'll throw at him. Because again, when you're that dominant, they're going to find different ways to play mind games with you and to make you think. And once they start making you think, as we know, Keith, when you're thinking, you're not reacting. When you're
Mhm.
not reacting, you're not playing as fast and as loose and as explosive as you typically could.
Yeah, I want to ask this too. I'm gonna toss it right back to you. Sack production.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that? Right, like, where is that a concern for you, or is it more so the position he's going to play? Like, is it something that you're going to require?
Not necessarily. 'Cause I think with the role he's going to play, like, I want him, especially early in his career, I want him just absolutely just a stout run defender, locking things down, playing physical, playing, just with power and strength. Like, watching him like shed guys, like, he hit that kind of that hump maneuver with the one arm and just get a guy up on, just getting a big rig up on one wheel and just tossing the guy to the side. Hey, I want him doing those type of things, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think the pass rush stuff there's enough flashes of his ability, again, with pad level, first step quickness, to where you say, okay, we can work on some of the hand stuff to allow you to deconstruct that block quickly. You know what I mean? As a big defensive tackle, I'm not too worried about the sack production, Keith. I think early on, if you're asking him to come in and be Jalen Carter, you're asking him to do the wrong thing in the first place, right? Like, I want him to be a stop run defender early, and then let's mature that game as your career goes on.
Yeah. Now I'm with it. I view that the same way, right? Like I want him to disrupt the run. And if you provide some pass rush pressure, right, I'm okay
4 or
with that.
5 sacks a season from my big run stuff and those defensive
Yeah,
tackle, Keith, I'm
that's
fine
great.
with it. I'm good. I'm good.
That's great. All right, DP, let's do this, man. The favorite part of the show. When we do what? We explain the grade and then we talk about draft comps, right? NFL draft comps, and we're discussing Kayden McDonald's draft grade and giving up an NFL draft comp coming up next.
Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you still have to fill is sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium placement and status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you, Keith. Explain the grade. Tell us what grade you have on Kayden McDonald. I'm expecting something pretty high because I know you've hinted at how much you like him. Tell us how much you like him with the grade, Keith.
Yeah, I gave him an 86.5 DP. I put him right there in the mix with the rest of his Ohio State teammates, with Orville Reese, Sonny Styles. I think his upside and ceiling is just not discussed enough. To me, he, over the past few years we've been doing this podcast, and over the past 5+ years we've been doing NFL draft analysis, he's one of the better, more complete defensive tackles that I've seen. And then when you're drafting defensive tackles, and in my opinion, DP, I lean towards, can you stop the run first? Because that's what I need you to do, right? Like, you're a defensive tackle, and I need you to be able to stop the run. And then your dominance factor doing that, right? And then how disruptive can you be overall? And in my opinion, he's disruptive. He checks both of those boxes. He's not an undersized guy. He's 330 pounds, 6'2", 330. He's built like a defensive tackle, how you would want your defensive tackle to be built. But when we talked about the element of quickness that's provided there, the high motor, the intensity, the dominance, I see this guy as a first-round pick. And this is the conversation. We'll get into the draft comps, right? But this is the conversation that I had, DP, was that I'm now that I'm at this point with Kayden McDonald, I'm going back through my drafts and my mock drafts, and I'm asking myself, do NFL teams like him a lot more than what we're discussing via the media? And is there a team in potentially the top 15 that says, yeah, we want a dominant defensive tackle, right? Like, and that's what I'm at, because there's the talent in me. I'm like, ask myself, am I seeing this right? But I feel as though I am, that this dude is pretty doggone good, right? Yeah. And so is there a team that's sitting there like, no, we want the defensive tackle, right? They're a team that we're mocking a corner, or we're mocking a interior defensive lineman that's saying like, no, we want this guy because we believe that he can be a dominant player in the trenches.
No, I like that, Keith. For me, for my grade, I have an 8.2, which would put him as a top 15 player over at Bleacher Report. I'm with you. I think the run defense, the dominance he brings, the upside as a pass rusher. Again, I think scheme versatility with him, Keith. Like, in terms of like the fronts, can he run? Can he be your nose tackle in the odd front? 100%. That's the ideal situation. But could he be a 3-tech or a 2-eye in an even front? Yes. Like I said earlier in the show, he can absolutely 2-gap. But man, if I can't get him against one-on-one blocks, I feel really good about that situation. Number one, I don't think there's many guards that are going to physically be able to stop him from getting into the backfield and creating that penetration, whether it be via the pass or the run, Keith. I just love what he brings to the table, the physicality, the power. And not even just that, it's the demeanor he plays with. This is a guy that does not want to be blocked. And he feels that you could tell he feels disrespected if you block him. I was watching one rep. Might have been against Wisconsin. I was watching the Wisconsin game. And I think the guard, he tried, like, it was kind of a sloppy start to the play because the guard almost like kind of blocked him a little bit. And the running back kind of, sidestepped into a different gap. Like he was trying to hit the play side A gap. He went to the A gap backside or whatever, opposite side of the center. And next thing you know, you just see Kayden McDonald just club the guard, and the guard hits the ground. And he sheds him, and then he makes the tackle. And I'm just like, brother, yeah, all right. You know what I mean? Like, you can't teach that type of stuff, man. So, I got 8.2 on him. I think, I think this is a guy that absolutely could be a top 15 pick in this class if a team really, like, truly understands. Like, again, watching Jordan Davis and his impact on that defensive line. If you have for example, if Vita Vea wasn't in Tampa Bay, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Keith. If I was Tampa Bay, Vita Vea was back in his career, I still would draft Kayden McDonald, even though I got Vita Vea, right? Because I think about you got a Kalijah Kancey, not saying he's Jalen Carter, but you have that pass rushing, just twitched up, explosive D tackle when he's healthy that can create penetration. Having a guy like Vita Vea can play that Jordan Davis role that allows that guy to get the one-on-ones and create advantageous opportunities for him. And if you start double teaming that guy because he's winning in pass rush, now I got Kayden McDonald or Jordan Davis in that situation one-on-one, Keith. So I'm gonna throw my comp out there. Yeah, Keith, I've said it before, the people on different shows, it's Vince Wilfork, just with more pass rush upside. I think he's a quicker, more explosive Vince Wilfork. And for those who know, if you're too young to know about Big Vince, please go make yourself aware of what Big Vince was able to do for those prime Patriot teams. And when they ran that odd front, that 3-4, he was a nose tackle, hard to run against him. And even from a height standpoint, right? Again, Kayden McDonald listed at 6'2" in 1/8, 326 pounds. Vince Wilfork was 6'1", 323 pounds. Coming in the combine, he had 36 reps on the bench, which absolutely showed up when he was out there, locking out 300-pound grown men and not allowing them to move them off the ball. I absolutely think that Kayden McDonald could be that type of player at the next level.
Yeah, no, I thought about that too, DP, and that was the closest one that I can get to, right? I thought about Milton Williams, I thought about Javon Hargrave, but I think those guys had more of the pass rush upside, right? And Milton Williams, I think, was probably smaller. Yeah, and it was small. Yeah, I think Milton was probably 20, 30 pounds lighter than them. So it was kind of tough finding that 6'2", 330 pounds. So I landed on Milton Williams. Also, I'd say landed on Milton Williams. I landed on Vincent Wilfork also for NFL comp. And I agree with you. And I think the movement skills part of it, DP, is I agree with you that there's just more athletic upside there that you can draft him to just be your nose tackle, right? But then you can also move him around and he can provide some different things. So I think there's some more flexibility, which could be interesting, looking at Kayden McDonald.
No, 100%, Keith. I mean, we've talked about potentially him we've done some mock drafts where at 26, the Buffalo Bills took Kayden McDonald, and it was like, yo, you need to switch into that odd front base. You need a guy like Kayden McDonald to allow Ed Oliver and Deion Walker, because right now I think you look at Our Lads. Shout out to Our Lads, one of the few websites that when free agencies and stuff is going on, the guys are new faces and new places, guys changing teams, they always update whether it's the scheme, the coaching staff, all that stuff on their website. And right now they have Deion Walker slated as nose tackle. And I'm like, no,
that's not great.
That ain't it. I don't want that at all. I want him as a defensive end, and I want to be able to handle single one-on-one blocks, baby. I don't want him against those guards and centers because that's not really his game. Where a Kayden McDonald for the Buffalo Bills makes sense, but maybe you get a big citrus, Dominic Orange, or Lee Hunter in round 2 if he's there, stuff like that. But teams that I think make a ton of sense, Keith. I think I put them in my mock was the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears
they're
run
another one. They
not
need
good.
injured defensive line.
It struggled last year. Then you lose Tremaine Edmonds, who goes to the New York Giants. He went to New York Giants. Got paid to go to the Giants. You got TJ Edwards, who's slated to be your starter right now. I think Noah Sewell, Penei Sewell's, I think younger brother. The big
the
strong
linebacker.
Linebacker to be your two off-ball backers in the middle of your defense. You know what, man? And I think that could work for you, but putting a guy like Kayden McDonald beside Gervon Dexter, let Gervon play that kind of 3-tech, right? And let him be that long, athletic guy getting upfield. Let Kayden McDonald be the guy that eats up space, eats up blocks, and really command the attention of the offensive line that lets whoever's at your second level of your defense, let those guys move around, let those guys flow to the football, Keith, because at the end of the day, that's just an invaluable situation, right? We saw the San Francisco 49ers last year with Alfred Collins and then CJ West. Like they said, no, we're not going to let teams run the ball on us in 2025 like that. And they went and got some young guys in the same draft, couple rounds apart, to help fix that situation to where then on third downs, we pull you off the field. We push Michael Williams, when healthy, into that 3-tech spot and let him rush. I think that, teams, again, in the NFL, Keith, like every history repeats itself. Not saying we're ever going to get back to the Jamal Lewis's 2,000-yard rushing seasons and stuff like that. I don't know if we get back to that volume of the run game, but history is repeating itself. As front sevens downsize, where you got so many 230-pound, 235-pound linebackers who are former safeties who aren't used to taking on blocks. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to make you take on blocks. I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to punch you in the mouth and see if you can stay athletic for 4 quarters with your legs drained. Well, a guy like Kayden McDonald is going to help keep your linebackers from having to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills, you mentioned Chicago Bears. So Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills, and then the other team at the back end of the first round that there've been noise and conversations about interior defensive line help would be the Houston Texans, right? Yes. That's another team, and you add him to Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Good luck, right? Like something that's already dangerous becomes that would be a situation, DP, where I would say watch out for the Houston Texans having one of the best defensive units of all time. I
could just see Jonathan Taylor throwing the water bottle watching the draft.
Yeah.
Like, knowing that he got to deal with that crap. Like, you're like, man, come on. Like, I can't run between the tackles. That's where they were kind of, that's what their weakness was. Like, now you get a Kayden McDonald but in the middle of that defense with D'Amico Ryans. Like, that's all the running backs in the AFC South are going to be pissed off. Like, man, all right. Like, it's just got a lot. We already got to deal with Will and Daniil. Like, what I mean? That's already a problem. Like, trying to run stretch zones and stuff like that with those guys. So he's like, let's run some power. Like, yeah, maybe not. Not with Kayden McDonald's in the middle.
Yep, I agree with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.